So, picture this. I'm just coming back from a long-ish day of classes, dragging my backpack and already dreaming of crashing on my couch, right? I get to my apartment door, and what do I see? This dude, my high school nemesis, wheeling a couch up the stairs like he owns the place. I froze. My brain did this weird flip-flop like a cartoon character suddenly stuck in slow motion. It was Jake. Yeah, Jake. The guy I've spent what felt like an entire lifetime competing with, squaring off against, and generally trying to avoid like the plague. And now, there he was, lugging furniture up to my damn door. I blinked a few times because maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe the stress of finals week was messing with me. Nope, it was very much real. Jake gave me this smug half smile, the kind that instantly made me want to punch a pillow. He looked way too comfortable carrying a bulky chair down the narrow hallway of our shared apartment building. Hey, he said casually, like he wasn't just breaking every personal boundary I'd set over the last 10 years. Hope you don't mind. Emma said it'd be cool if I moved in. Okay, now you have to understand. Emma is the mutual friend who somehow thought this was a fantastic idea. I mean, who thinks their two worst enemies should share a tiny apartment just a few minutes from campus? I blinked again, probably not as innocently this time. Emma said, "What?" I asked, my voice barely disguising my disbelief. Jake shrugged, clearly enjoying the awkwardness he'd just caused. She figured we'd make great roommates. Great, I thought. Sure, if by great you mean a never-ending competition to see who can out-stubborn the other, with a side of passive-aggressive post-it notes. And yet, there he was, setting up camp in my living room. I stared at the couch he was dragging inside, a hideous thing that looked like it tasted the 80s and decided to never leave. My stomach twisted. How on earth had this happened without me knowing? When did Emma get so confident in her matchmaking skills? Was I even asked? Could I survive living with the guy who, not so long ago, made my life a living nightmare back in high school? I guess at that moment I knew two things for sure. One, Emma had officially lost her mind, and two, my life was about to get a lot more complicated. Alright, so to really get why seeing Jake crashing my space felt like a bad plot twist, I have to take you back a little. High school wasn't exactly a playground of rainbows and group hugs for me and Jake. Nope. From the moment we locked eyes freshman year, it was like clashing swords in a medieval duel, except with more detention and way less honor. Jake was that guy who slid into class late, always had that half smirk, and somehow made everything about him just slightly more annoying than it needed to be. Whether it was the science fair, class president elections, or even who got picked to hand out papers, Jake and I turned every little thing into some kind of competition. And not the fun kind either. The kind that leaves you grimacing every time you hear someone mention his name. So, imagine my surprise and horror when Emma, this mutual friend of ours who somehow played referee and cheerleader but usually stayed out of the fire, calls me up mid-July, practically buzzing with excitement about me finally needing a roommate. She went on about how, of all people, she thought Jake and I complemented each other's energy. I repeat, complemented. Like we were two puzzle pieces designed to annoy the heck out of each other but somehow make a complete picture. Yeah, that was her pitch. Now here's the kicker. My summer job suddenly got cut, meaning my budget tanked faster than my roommate chances before Emma dropped the bomb. Jake's looking for a place too. And I've got this great apartment near campus. Why don't you two share? She sounded like I was signing up to be in some feel-good sitcom. I'm sitting there on my couch, flipping through budget spreadsheets and apartment listings, absolutely not happy about the idea of splitting rent with anyone. But with classes starting in a few weeks and my wallet echoing loneliness, I finally blurted out, "Fine." But not Jake. But Jake. Emma's laugh through the phone was like nails on a chalkboard. Too late, he's basically moving in. Cue my stunned silence. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe I misheard or she'd changed her mind. Nope, she was dead serious. And so, just days before the semester started, Jake was performing his not-so-subtle furniture parade up the stairs, glancing over like this whole ordeal was somehow a game he was winning. The stakes? Well, retaining my sanity, for one. Keeping my grades from nosediving as Jake cranked music at ungodly hours was another. And let's not forget my social life, because how do you explain to your friends that your enemy is now your roommate without sounding like the star of a very weird sitcom? So, there I was, stuck with Jake, eyeing this hideous couch like it was the physical embodiment of my bad decisions, wondering how much of my patience and nerve I still had left to survive this. It felt like I'd signed up for a reality show where the prize was just peace of mind, except it was really just Jake and me stuck in one tiny apartment that had zero escape routes. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for the chaos this would bring, but somehow, the wheels were already turning and not exactly in my favor. The first week living with Jake was basically a masterclass in awkwardness, but not the fun, cringe your friends out kind. It was more like tiptoeing through a minefield, but instead of mines, it was all these little tensions bubbling just under the surface. Like we'd be in the kitchen at the same time and the air would get thick enough to slice, but neither of us would say a word. Silent meals became the norm. For some reason, neither of us wanted to break the ice first. So we just sort of chewed in unison and stared at the wall like it was our best escape route. Then there were the snide remarks, subtle digs slipping out when we thought the other wasn't paying attention. One night, I caught him leaving dirty dishes piled in the sink like a lazy monument to passive aggression. Without thinking, I laid down the law. Hey, could you maybe pitch in with cleaning up? I'm not your maid. He shot me this grin, halfway between smug and mischievous, and said, "Since when did you become the cleaning police?" As if I was suddenly the enemy. That probably escalated our tensions more than I wanted. Because here's the thing, Jake was the absolute opposite of me when it came to tidiness. I mean, I'm not hyper-organized or anything, but the guy's idea of clean was throwing his sneakers into a pile next to the door and calling it a day. Meanwhile, I had spreadsheets for my laundry schedule and a label maker for my pantry. So yeah, clashes were inevitable. But then, about midweek, something caught me off guard. I found him one evening sitting on the couch. Remember the hideous 80s relic I despised, just staring at his phone with this faraway, almost lost expression. And when I mumbled a distracted, "You okay?" he didn't do the usual shrug and smirk. Instead, his voice dropped down to something quieter, the kind of confession you don't expect from your high school nemesis. "Family stuff's been rough lately," he said. "Parents fighting? Might have to move back home soon if things don't get better." That caught me off guard. Suddenly, the dude who had been the constant thorn in my side wasn't just a competitor or irritant, he was someone caught up in real problems. And for a brief moment, I saw Jake not as the guy who always had to be the winner, but as a person who didn't have all the answers. But old habits die hard. The very next day, we had a full-blown argument that nearly blew the apartment apart. Figuratively speaking, thankfully. He left his mess in the living room again. I snapped. "Are you just gonna keep doing this? This place isn't a dumpster, you know." "Oh, and what? You think just because I'm going through stuff I owe you the royal treatment? I don't need a babysitter, thanks." His tone was sharp, and that's when the words came out, words I didn't mean but did, all tangled up in frustration. "Maybe if you actually tried to act like a decent roommate, I wouldn't care." He stared at me, mouth twitching like he wanted to say something savage back, but instead just threw up his hands and walked out of the room. That night was absolute hell. The kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful but more like the calm before some kind of storm you weren't sure how to stop. But somehow, by the next morning, the tension had diffused into this awkward, uneasy truce. We weren't best buds or even civil allies, but at least we weren't simmering beneath the surface waiting to explode. Still, neither of us knew if the peace was just on loan or if we really could find any kind of middle ground. It was like crossing a rickety bridge, hoping it wouldn't snap beneath our feet with every step. And I wasn't sure who was more surprised to be standing there, Jake or me. So, after that stormy showdown and the silent truce that followed, something pretty unexpected started to happen. It wasn't like we suddenly turned into this comedy duo or anything, but the wall between us, it wasn't quite as thick anymore. Little things began to shift, not with a dramatic, "let's be friends" moment, but with these quiet, almost accidental gestures. Like one evening I came home buried in textbooks and stress and found Jake in the kitchen, actually washing dishes. I hesitated, thinking maybe it was a trap or some weird prank, but he just gave me a quick nod and said, "Don't want the sink to be a biohazard when you get back." I almost laughed, and weirdly, it felt like he was acknowledging that we were both in this together, even if just grudgingly. Then there was the time I caught him at the library, looking like he wanted to smash his laptop, and I just handed him a granola bar I happened to have. No words, no big speeches, just a small, "You got this," in the way only awkward roommates can manage. And to my surprise, he actually smiled, more genuine than that usual half smirk he wore like armor. Emma, bless her persistent soul, showed up more often too. She had this knack for diffusing our tension without making it weird. One weekend, she dragged both of us out for brunch, cracking jokes like she was some kind of peacemaker on a mission. And while we rolled our eyes, I couldn't deny that seeing Jake and me laugh, even if just at Emma's expense, was something I never thought I'd witness. Of course, the old rival in us didn't disappear overnight. A few passive-aggressive sticky notes still appeared on the fridge, usually mocking each other's choice in music or the bizarre way Jake stored his sneakers. But those jabs didn't sting as much anymore, they felt more like banter than battle lines. And the trust? Well, that was the hardest part. After years of sizing each other up, it wasn't like I could suddenly let my guard down and assume everything was sunshine and rainbows. But I started to realize that maybe forgiving him didn't mean forgetting the past. It just meant recognizing that people could change, or at least try to, even if the process was messy and slow. One night, after a long day, Jake and I ended up sitting on the couch together. Yup, the hideous 80s relic that had somehow become a weird symbol of this strange truce. We didn't say much, just shared space in a way that felt less like a battlefield and more like, well, a shared life, I guess. Looking back, I think Emma was onto something. Maybe Jake and I did complement each other's energy after all, not because we were perfect for each other, but because our differences pushed us to grow in ways neither of us expected. So, here's the real question I've been turning over in my head since this whole wild ride started. Could you live with your worst enemy and find something like peace or even friendship in the chaos? Because for me, the answer wasn't a simple yes or no. It was more like a long, awkward maybe with a side of hope sprinkled on top. And honestly, that was probably good enough.